Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Plastic Posse Podcast, a podcast all about scale modeling. Before we get started, we want to give our grateful thanks to the sister modeling podcasts that are also about scale modeling. We're going to start out with the boys down in Australia, Dave, Ian, and Julian from the On the Bench podcast. They've been terrific with us, very supportive. Want to talk also about Plastic Model Mojo, Dave and Mike over in Kentucky, and they've been very helpful to us as well, helping to promote us and give us tips and pointers. And then also the Scale Model podcast, Stuart up in Canada has been fantastic. We just really want those guys to know that we're grateful. And we'd also ask you to, if you're not already familiar with their podcast, give their podcast a listen. My name is Scott Gentry. I don't know crap about hockey, but I definitely know about scale modeling. I'm going to be joined by two co-hosts, TJ Holler from the East Coast and Doug Smith, who's out here in Utah with me. We're going to start out with our official podcast herpetologist, Doug Mad Dog Smith. Doug, give people an idea of who you are and how you became a modeler.
Well, first of all, I got to say I'm not really a herpetologist. I love reptiles and amphibians and stuff. I own some and I go and I look for them in the wild, but I do not study them. I'm not really the theologist part doesn't belong on my name. So I'm originally from California. I started modeling at about 7 years old. Was introduced to it by a neighbor who was an excellent modeler. He modeled beautifully without all the tips and tricks and the aftermarket stuff that we have today. And I would never be ashamed to do as well as he did then, even with everything I have. So I got into modeling with airplanes with fingerprints all over it with the glue marks and everything. And I did that until I started learning how to fill seams and sand and stuff when I was a teenager. Didn't really get heavily into modeling until I met Scott when I was about 24 years old. We worked together and he and I started talking a lot about it, and we got involved with some other guys. It's kind of been one of those things I've been doing for a long, long time now. And
unlike me, Doug does know about hockey. He's a big Chicago Blackhawks fan.
Go Hawks. I mean, not this year, but next year maybe.
Our other co-host, TJ Holler, is coming to us live from the dungeon of his secret laboratory, where he paints amazing wargaming miniatures and other models. And he's also an unabashed Washington Capitals fan. TJ, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm TJ. I live here in Northern Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where it is always hot in the summer, but not too bad. So I got into modeling in 2012 as an adult, which is a little bit different than it seems like the normal story goes that I've seen floating around on the internet. I discovered Warhammer 40,000 that I was familiar with through video games, which is another one of my hobbies, and I bought a starter set and just took off from there. And from there, I found out that they made Star Wars kits, and Star Wars is one of my other favorite things, so I started buying those. And then I saw that they make World War I tanks, and I thought, well, I like World War I tanks. Maybe I should get some of these. And from there, I've just pretty much expanded to most things you can think of. I'm not so much into the airplanes, not because I dislike airplanes. I actually love airplanes, especially World War II planes and modern fighters. They just really intimidate me for some reason.
Kind of what got me into the hobby was Battlestar Galactica, and specifically Ralph McQuarrie's Colonial Viper design. I just fell in love with it. And as a kid, when I saw the old Revell Viper model, I knew I just had to have it. It was so much more detailed than all the toys were at that age that I just, my eyes grew big, and I knew I just had to have one. I actually didn't get one for years after that, but that's what pulled me into this hobby. TJ, what's this posse going to be about? What's the Plastic Posse podcast going to consist of every 2 weeks?
So the Plastic Posse podcast is going to be fun and entertaining conversations, kind of like a virtual hangout. So we want it to feel like you're sitting here in the basement with us, and we're shooting the breeze, or we're down at the hobby shop on the weekend and we're talking about the models we want, and we're bringing one to show off to our buddies. And we really just want everyone that listens share in the hobby that the three of us all enjoy. And we want all modelers. It doesn't matter if it's aircraft, armor, science fiction, Gundam, gaming miniatures, figures, boats, anything. It's all the same hobby. So we want to have reviews on kits, finishing products, paints, tools, supplies, you name it. We want to talk about it. And we also really want to talk about the techniques in the hobby that we all enjoy, from weathering and, some construction type stuff, and even some kit bashing, maybe even lighting. I know I've tried it a little bit and it's pretty fun. And we also would like to have some interviews, and we have an interview coming up in our first episode from someone that some of our listeners might know if they're frequent users of Facebook. He's a very talented modeler from Pittsburgh, and I think it's going to be a really good interview. He's a very energetic guy. He loves the hobby just as much as us, so you'll have to stay tuned and listen to that.
That's going to be awesome. So why the Posse, Doug?
Well, I think TJ hit on it really well. We're going to be hanging out. We're just gonna shoot the breeze like a bunch of friends sitting around discussing our love for this hobby. We really, really want participation from our listeners. We have a Facebook page. Please feel free to comment on there. Send us messages through there. We'd love to hear from you. We have an email if that's more your speed. It's plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. But the idea is to share our love of our hobby with y'all, and hopefully you share your love of the hobby with us, and we can grow together. We have these interviews that we've got scheduled. We actually are considering even interviewing some of you. Anybody out there that's listening, we'd consider talking to you if you have something you think you can add to us. Let's talk about it. Let's bring you on.
What's that Facebook page, Doug?
It's Plastic Posse Podcast.
That seems appropriate, right?
Triple P, yep.
As far as how often and when, you guys can plan on hearing from us every 2 weeks, like our other sister scale modeling podcast. We're going to offset the schedule a little bit so that we don't kind of step on them and they don't step on us. And hopefully as listeners, it gives you a little bit more regular regimen of podcasts to listen to while you're down on your bench modeling or you're driving to work on your commute. Hopefully we're entertaining and informative and you enjoy listening to us. So, well, let's get started. Current projects. Doug, what's on your bench right now?
My bench. I have a Gundam kit on my bench. That's one of them. And let me tell you which one it is. It is the Gundam. Let's see. It's the Gundam D Hell Custom. It's the HG, the hella good grade of Bandai Gundam kits. It's something that I'm doing mostly because I'm interested in attempting something new. I don't do Gundam. It's not one of my favorite subjects, but I think this could be a lot of fun, and I want to learn. I want to learn all aspects of this hobby as I can. And this one just looked like it might be a hoot, so I started that one. I'm going to do a little filling of seams and a little sanding, and I'm going to start painting it. It's going to have to be painted in pieces because you certainly can't assemble this thing and paint it all at once. I also have a Tamiya 1/35th scale Easy 8. I have a bunch of kits in boxes because I am a master at starting a kit and putting it away.
What about your big project, Doug? What's your big project?
My big project is a 1:1 scale model room in my basement. I'm working on getting that done, and once I'm to that point, that leads me into other big projects. I have a couple of Bandai Perfect Grade Millennium Falcons. I've got 2 of them I'm going to build, but I need the space, and I certainly don't have it now, and so I'm really looking forward to that.
TJ, what's on your bench right now?
Oh, on my bench, well, like most modelers, I've got, I don't know, at least eight kits going right now, but what's taking up most of my time is my Space Marine Warhammer 40,000 army. On my desk right now, I quite literally have an army of Space Marines pretty much covering the whole thing. Also hiding back there, I have Tamiyas KV-1, the new kit, which is built, ready for priming, and I will say it is gorgeous.
That's a great kit. Really beautiful kit. You picked up, speaking of your Warhammer pieces, you picked up one of those new Warhammer Indomitus boxes, right?
I did. It just came out, I want to say, about a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago. It coincided with the launch of the 9th edition of the tabletop game. If any of our listeners are interested in that, I also play. I probably paint and model the figures more than I play, especially given the current situation, but it's all new sculpts. I think you get 24 Space Marines, probably something like 30 Necrons, which are essentially, for those who don't know, essentially killer space robots. They look like Terminators without the skin on them from the Terminator movie.
Nice.
And I will say these miniatures are just absolutely gorgeous. It's just sometimes I am surprised that they can do what they do. And they're pretty small. If anyone's seen them, they're 28 millimeter scale. So that's pretty tiny. And they're so much fun. I really can't sing their praises enough. I enjoy every moment that I spend painting them.
Citadel puts out a really good product.
They do, and they've only gotten better, and they've gotten more expensive, which is unfortunate, but can't really do anything about that. There's plenty of us out there that are willing to pay the price.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Doug, you built several of these figures and these vehicles for your sons who play this, right?
Yeah, the one I actually have one that's on the bench. I didn't bring that one up, but I'm actually painting the. Oh geez, I always forget the name of it because they're the Astra.
Lehman Russ.
Lehman Russ, yeah. It's the Astra Militarum Lehman Russ battle tank. He asked for a little special band on it to be painted down the side, a red band down the side of the hull. And it's not a straight line. There's a lot of angles on this, so it was really kind of difficult to paint. But I got that done. I'm ready to start weathering it. We'll see how it turns out. It is fun. If I had any complaints about this tank and some of the others, is they all don't always have like aligning tabs.
No.
It's just a picture on the instructions that say this goes here, and so you kind of have to pick on the blank plastic where you're going to glue a piece onto it. And I'm not fond of that, but overall, it's not hard to work with.
What about painting? How do they have good way to paint those, or do you just kind of apply your modeling skills?
I am applying my modeling skills, but the Citadel line, their paint line, if you were to say a beginner and there was an effect you wanted to get, the Citadel line has like a system for you to go and map exactly what you want to do, and it will tell you use this paint, use this paint, use this paint. If you want that blue chrome look, they'll show you exactly how to get it. And it's really neat. It's a genius idea. I think that your good modelers will get away from that and do it themselves after time. But it's a way to make a decent looking army without having to learn too many new skills. It's a good system.
As far as what I have, I've got a Bandai 1/72 scale T65 X-Wing that I've painted in Phoenix Squadron markings, which is from the Rebel show. It's got a lot of green in it and just a little bit of your atypical, Red Squadron X-Wing that you see kind of over and over. And then I also picked up a Polar Lights USS Shengzhou, I hope I said that right, little starship kit on 1/2500th scale kit, very, very small. But the reason I did it was sort of this modeling out of your comfort zone idea that we talk about, where I really hate decals, like really, 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 really hate decals. I would rather do anything. My wife has one of those silhouette cutters, and I'm always getting her to scan my decal sheet so that I can have painting masks and airbrush on my markings. But anyway, this kit is all about the decals, all the detail, the Aztecing, everything is the decal. So I'm tackling that and using it as sort of that modeling out of my comfort zone. As far as what are we all looking forward to, Doug, I need to go back to something you said. How did you end up with not one but two Bandai Perfect Grade Falcon models?
Well, let's see. A couple years ago, it's been 2 years since they announced that kit. I want to say maybe it's been 3 now.
I think it's been 3.
Bandai went so far as to release a 4-minute video touting this new kit. And I watched it and I was absolutely blown away. I also kind of had an idea of what the price point was going to be. And I knew there was no way I'd get it. Absolutely not. But I was at home and we were bored, and I told my daughter, I said, check this out. I know you're not into modeling, but check this out. And I showed it to her, and she was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And behind the scenes went to her brother's and arranged to acquire one for me for Christmas that year. And I've never been more shocked by a gift in my life. And they said it was worth every penny just to see the look on my face. But right shortly after we decided to move, so I was finding a new place, and now I've got to finish a room to actually build this thing in, so it got put off. Well, I have a friend who knows an awful lot about construction, who is a big Star Trek and Star Wars fan. He loves that stuff. and I've built him a couple kits in the past, and I bribed him. I said, you've got the knowledge. I don't mind doing most of the work, but if you'll come out and give me some guidance and some pointers and maybe help me with a little bit of stuff, I'll be happy to build you one of these. Now, of course, I can't give him the kit my kids bought me. That would be wrong, right? So
absolutely.
So fortunately, that happened about the time that a new run recently of the Perfect Grade Falcons was released. So I bought a second one, and I'm excited to get started on these things. It's going to be 100+ hour kits. Easy.
Okay. So hold on here. TJ, I need a judge's ruling on this. So Doug is going to get a basement room finished for a model room. And the price for this is he gets to work on one of the most incredible kits that have ever been made. He's a genius.
It's a fair deal. I wish I could find that deal, because I have a basement that needs to be finished too. But I don't know anyone that wants one.
I'm gonna up this one. I want you to know that it's not just a room for my modeling. It's my wife's sewing room, my reptile room, and a bathroom that is getting done.
Yeah, so, all I'm hearing right now is Bandai Perfect Grade Falcon. Perfect Grade Falcon. Yeah. That's all I'm hearing. Well, Doug, this kind of modeling outside your comfort zone was sort of your idea. So why don't we start with you? Why don't you talk about your modeling outside your comfort zone project?
Okay. Well, I'll first say my comfort zone is mostly Star Wars. That's what I've been doing is Bandai kits for the last few years, because they're just a dream to build. They go together easily. They're just, the detail is great. And I love Star Wars. I've loved it since I was 7 and the first movie came out. I'm dating myself, but yes, I'm 50 years old. But I also love airplanes. I used to build a lot of airplanes. I built the Hasegawa Tomcat. That's actually my modeling moment right there, was the Hasegawa 48 scale Tomcat. It was awesome to build, a lot of challenge, but it turned out really good. But I want to get into other stuff. I love tanks. Armor is a very cool subject, and what guy doesn't love tanks, right?
Yeah.
So I've got the Sherman Easy 8 going right now, and I'd love to do more. There's some Russian subjects that really intrigue me, and that's what I want to do. And I'm doing this Gundam as well, because it's all fun, it's all new, and it will all be a challenge. And that's my goal here, is to improve myself. I'd like to throw on aftermarket stuff, which I'm not a big user of at this point, but I think it can be done for me, and that's what I'm looking at.
Well, I've kind of spoken about my Shenzhou little experiment, but I think we need to talk about our good friend TJ for a minute here. He has, I know for a fact, in his stash one of those new beautiful Tamiya P-38 Lightnings, just engineering masterpiece. And, rumor has it that the kit has him a little intimidated. So, Doug, I think we need to arm wrestle him to his bench and get him to start working on that kit.
Yeah, the rumors are true. I am incredibly intimidated by that kit. I would also like to say I have a handful of aftermarket things to go with it. I think I have some resin wheels, metal gun barrels, maybe one other thing. I can't remember. I might have gotten cockpit. I don't know. I'd have to pop the box open and to see what I bought.
That would be cool.
It's just a regular seat, I guess. I can't remember if that's what I bought, or maybe some photo etch. I don't know. I have to look. Yeah, I would love to build that, and I've taken it out of the box at least twice and looked at it and thought about starting to clip some of the pieces off, and decided that my time would be best spent doing something else, because I don't know if I can do. It's such an interesting subject, and there's so many great references of those planes, especially the ones from the Pacific, that are just dirty and beat up and just disgusting, but in all the right ways.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if I don't feel like I could do that justice. I mean, I'd like to prove myself wrong, and I hope I do. But yeah, you guys are gonna have to drive out here to Virginia and kick my door down and.
I promise you this, Scott and I both have the same kits, and we also have aftermarket for it. And so maybe we'll figure something out where we all do it.
Oh, that'd be a great idea.
The Lightning is just such an incredible airplane. I had the chance to see him fly before, and I even saw 5 of them all at once, and that was a treat. That was at Chino in 2013, and I would absolutely love to build that kit.
Yeah, I've been sort of praying to the modeling gods for literally decades for a company with the engineering and quality standards of Tamiya to put out a good kit of the Lightning, because it is a complex build with the, the twin booms and everything. But, I have no doubt in my mind that Tamiya is up to the task, and that you're going to have a great experience building that. And by the way, TJ has a trademark pending on describing weathering as disgusting in all the right ways. That's just epic right there.
Yes.
So
that's weathering.
Absolutely. So Doug, you've got a great idea for a new segment that I think we're going to incorporate into all of our episodes moving forward. Why don't you talk about your idea?
Okay, we know that right now most people are buying their modeling supplies online and their kits and everything. We also know that we all love and adore having a local hobby store nearby. And we need to support that, even if it's just because, oh my gosh, I'm out of flat black. I need to get to the store, and it's there and you don't have to wait a few days for it. I would like to have a shout out to our local hobby stores. So if you would all mind, anybody that has a local hobby store that they love, that they want us to talk about, I don't care where it's at, give us a name, the city it's in, and why you love it. And we're going to pick a few of those every week and read them out and give them a shout out.
That's awesome. That's a great idea. TJ, I don't know if you've got one, but I'm going to take a minute here to shout out MRS Hobby here in Sandy, Utah. It's a great local shop here, and what he's been really, really awesome at is bringing in all these new amazing paint and finishing lines, the MIG ammo weathering products, the AK Real Colors paint, the Goon Sangyo paints from Japan. It's a fantastic shop, so go see Doug, the owner, if you get a chance and you are in Utah. They also carry a full line, whether it's Warhammer figures or Gunpla. I think Gunpla kits make up probably at least 50% of his business. So anyway, shout out to MRS Hobby in Sandy, Utah. And TJ, you have anybody you want to shout out?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I do. I'd like to give a shout out to Huzzah Hobbies in Ashburn, Virginia. It's about 25 minutes from my house. It's owned by a guy named Chris, who is probably one of the single nicest guys I've ever met in my life. I started going to his shop in 2012 when I first got into Warhammer 40,000. At that time, he was a little tiny hole-in-the-wall shop, and since then, he's expanded his store 3 times and now has a large footprint. He's primarily a gaming store, but as he's grown, he's started incorporating more and more stuff. He has ammo washes now. He has Aptalung 502 oils, some Tamiya weathering supplies, Vallejo, multiple different of the different Vallejo lines. He also sells Gundams, and he sells Bandai Star Wars kits, and he's got just about all of them in stock. And like I said, the owner, Chris, is just a great guy. His staff is always willing to help. And, luckily he's made it through the shutdown. Seems like pretty much, unscathed. He was still able to do business to a degree. So I wish him nothing but luck in the future. And if anyone's listening and you're in the Northern Virginia area, Loudoun County area, or even a little bit further out, and that sounds good to you, swing by, check it out. It's a great little store.
Awesome. So make sure and stop by our Facebook page, Plastic Posse Podcast, and give a shout out to your local hobby store. And we'll be sure and read that in the next episode of the podcast. And that'll be great for them and great for you. All right. Well, coming up next, we've got our special segment that TJ teased earlier on with a guest host. That's going to be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to it. So let's move into that right now. today we've got a special segment for everybody on armor modeling. And not only do we have a guest, but we have our first official Posse guest host. We want to welcome into the show the renowned, talented, handsome John Bonnani. John, welcome to the podcast, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be such a great armor modeler.
Oh boy, I have to go way back for that. No, well, first off, thank you, Scott, for inviting me and the other two, Don and TJ. I really appreciate the invite, and I look forward to contributing as one of the first official Posse members. So, where to begin? I grew up with scale modeling. I was very lucky that my dad was fruitfully obsessed with it, and it kind of rubbed off on me. Not so much my siblings, but I've carried it with me. I'm 34, and I think my first show I was probably like 4 or 5 years old, and I was always told to put my hands in my pocket, so I think I still do that. So I grew up in the ITMS. Yeah, exactly. So I'm always careful, no lanyards or anything, leaning over the models, always have my hands in my pocket. So, just grew up around the hobby, grew up around the shows. A lot of people, at least on the East Coast, for listeners, I'm from the Pittsburgh area, coasts up and down the East, shows up and down the East Coast, and throughout the world, I would go to the IPMS Nationals and some other big shows, and just got to know a lot of the members in the hobby, and it's been a really great ride. So, as Scott mentioned, Closet Modeler, JB Closet Modeler is what I go by on Facebook. I have an Instagram page, but I don't really populate it. But you can find most of my work on my Facebook page, and then I publish for some magazines as well. And then in real life, background in aerospace engineering, and I work for a small startup in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Well, what is it that drew you into armor modeling to begin with?
Oh, so I always liked armor. I remember going to the Aberdeen Proving Grounds as a kid and just seeing and looking over the field. I'm like, man, this is the coolest stuff I've ever seen. So every kid loves a tractor, but then when you put a gun on it, it becomes infinitely more cool. So I was hooked from that moment on, and I always dabbled in the hobby, went away, and what really sparked me to get back into it back in 2003 was Band of Brothers, and specifically episode 3, Carentan, when the Yag Panther and the Stug pops out of the hedgerow. I was like, oh man, I want to build one of those, and kind of went off and on with the hobby since then, and got really back serious with it probably about 6 or 7 years ago.
All right, guys, so we're going to talk about armor, obviously. As Scott already explained, one of the first things we want to talk about is the new Border Models 135th scale Crusader III. I know we talked about it off before we started recording. I think everyone here is really excited to see that kit. I know me personally, that's one of my favorite tanks pretty much ever, especially from the Second World War. There's something about the way it looks. It's got that angular turret. It was fast. It was kind of like I think Scott described it as almost like a sports car. I think that's what you said, Scott. Yep,
exactly. It wasn't the greatest tank out there, but it's really got almost a sexy profile, especially, a lot of tanks tend to be boxy and bulky, and the Crusaders just, it almost looks like an MG or something out there on the battlefield.
So I know we're all really looking forward to it. They haven't released a whole lot of information about it, but they did show the CAD drawings for it, and it looks fantastic. I think it's the first Crusader in probably 25-30 years, so I'm sure it'll be better than whatever else is out there.
I've got that Tamiya Reeboks of the ancient Italeri 135th scale kit, but John, weren't you telling us you built a 132nd scale kit of that tank?
Yeah, other than the Italieri option, there is the old Airfix option, and that one is from 1975, 32nd scale. It's been reboxed a few times, and it looks like it's been carved out of a bar of soap, but I did my best with
it. That tooling was released when probably a lot of our listeners weren't even still alive. TJ, we're looking at you right now.
Yeah, I don't think I was around for that one.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think we're all, excited, looking forward to that. I don't know much about Border Models. I think they might be connected to, maybe to Mung or to Take-On. I don't know for sure, but if the kit looks anything like the CAD shots, we're all going to be really happy and excited to get that kit.
And I was just going to add, Night Shift is doing a series now on the Crusader Mark III. He's doing it with the 148th version from Tamiya, but for listeners that want to have an idea, some inspiration on how they may paint it, his series on YouTube are fantastic, and that is his subject matter right now, so perfect timing.
For those of you listeners out there that aren't familiar with Night Shift, it's one of the best YouTube channels out there. Martin is a great modeler. His videos are shot very, very well. They're entertaining. They're edited, to be very concise and easy to follow. So check out Night Shift on YouTube. I think you'll really like that. And as John just mentioned, he's doing a Crusader right now.
Any of you guys built a 1/16 armor kit before?
I have not. I have the Panther and Yog Tiger from Trumpeter sitting in the corner of the basement. My wife wants me to move, but I have not built them yet.
Yeah, TJ's exposed us. Yeah, I've got a pile of them, but I haven't ever built one yet, and so looking forward to it. I've got the Tacom Panzer I, which is a pretty sharp little kit. I've got the the FT-17, also by Tacom, and a few other ones as well. I've got a Panzer 38T that is really, really nice. That's a great size for that. And this Stuart, I don't think I'd want to build a Yog Tiger or a King Tiger or something huge like that in this scale, but the Stuart is such a diminutive little tank, and some of those other ones like the FT that I think 1/16 scale is a really nice size.
Yeah, I think I was just going to comment too. I think 1/16 scale really brings out a different type of weathering as well. In 35th scale, from my perspective, a lot of modeling that I do is kind of more towards the artistic side. But as you get into that larger scale, those artistic kind of techniques, modulation, black and white technique, post shading, all of that it's a lot more difficult when it's that size. It's a lot more difficult to recreate realistically. And I think if you take some of the practices from Mike Rinaldi, reverse dry brushing, those very subtle effects, creating tonal variations, that would be a really cool challenge and something neat to pull off.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I also have the Renault FT in 1/16, and I'd like to build it, but I am a little nervous about weathering something that size. I know it's a different animal. But speaking of artistic side of things, you were telling us off air that you are working on an M4A1 Sherman in what kind of camouflage scheme?
So I'm working on the old Italieri M4A1 Sherman. I got it for $10 off the Scale Model Graveyard, and it's being painted as a World of Tanks paint scheme. Specifically, if you're familiar with the game, and if not, it's a simple scheme, OD, but on top is a very squiggly kind of winter scheme. And I think I have a picture on my Facebook account, but I had this kit on the shelf of Doom. I just started playing the game more, which probably is going to take a hit to my modeling time. But I was just like, man, I think that would really look cool in 35th scale. So I just went for it, and it's been a blast. And I would recommend, everyone, listeners, and you gentlemen, to go out of your comfort zone and just pull out a scheme that really doesn't exist and unleash some new techniques to learn from.
That's a great suggestion, and I think the best part of World of Tanks is their digital models. They have some really interesting ideas, and not all their camouflages are necessarily factual based, but they all look pretty legit in the game on the pieces that they're modeled on.
Yeah, I'm guilty of spying on my teammates' tanks, wow, what is that? That is cool. And then I'll be honest, even checking out weathering patterns, their digital modelers are incredibly impressive. And I give them a lot of credit to make these vehicles. A lot of them look very realistic. And I love the fictional stuff too. I'll be honest. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's fun, right? And There's no reason not to have fun when you're doing your hobby. I know that's not always the most popular thing in the world, but who cares?
Yeah, TJ, you mentioned a good thing too. It's always good to go out of your comfort zone, and I'll also say I'm kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum as well. So in this case, I'm doing something totally fictional, where my last vehicle was a Yog Tiger, 331, a very famous vehicle, and you go hyper realistic, hyper accurate, where you go down to studying multiple angles of black and white photography, color photography, looking at how it was repainted at the museum, looking at the shell marks, the date of, production. So you can really, that's me on the opposite side of the spectrum. And, I try to find a happy balance in between, but I can relate to almost anyone.
You mentioned artistic modeling as far as your finish style. Maybe, again, I think a lot of our listeners might not really understand what that means, but maybe touch on that. The Spanish style's been so influential, particularly to armor modelers. Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And again, I'll reiterate, anyone's style I can appreciate. If it's done, how Francois Verlinden did it, I can appreciate it if it's well executed. And what you had just mentioned, the Spanish school, is these punchy highlights, these, really extreme tonal gradations on the finish. So a good example, Adam Wilder is a really great modeler, and his YouTube series on a KB1 shows that modulation, that punchy style where you're using extreme highlights, really deep shadows, and I try to find a happy balance in between, but it's, it is real, it is eye appealing. Is it realistic? I would probably say not. But if done correctly, when you take a step back from the model, a foot or two, it really does, at least in my mind, capture the essence of a realistic vehicle, at least from lighting and pigments, and it's all about moderation as well when you're working with it. There's also, Spanish school can be applied to aircraft as well. Daniel Zimabard, I apologize if I didn't get his last name right. He's a fantastic Spanish modeler that does the Spanish school, is really he defines it, and what he does is truly incredible. And I also liken it to some of the Warhammer painting that you guys are doing, which I draw a lot of inspiration from. You look at these extreme highlights on the edges, really deep shadows. That's what I love with certain subjects that are like large plates. Or like angular types of vehicles. The Crusader is a perfect example of something that could be really well executed in the Spanish school, because you have those angles from the plates, but then also you can pick out the rivets, which can, again, add extreme highlights to such a small detail.
Man, you got me stoked. You guys are going to have to finish this interview without me. I got to go build a model right now. So see you guys later. So, go ahead.
John, you mentioned Warhammer models. I would love. So let me go ahead and say this. I'm a huge fan of your work. So I'm going to fangirl a little bit.
Oh, I appreciate that. You're making me blush.
Like, you are legitimately one of my hobby heroes. So it's
wow.
I am tickled
Nice.
pink to be able to talk to you.
High praise. That's high praise, John.
I would love to see you do like a Warhammer tank, just because they're so ridiculous and so not real. They don't even look like they should work, because they probably wouldn't if they were real. I think Doug, you've built a few Warhammer tanks before, haven't you?
I've done one of the ships. I've actually got a tank I'm working on right now.
What is that one?
The Astra Militarium, the Lehman Russ battle tank.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool.
That's what I've got going on right here.
And back to I don't want the John to kind of sneak out of here without this challenge. Now, John, you did bring up modeling outside of your comfort zone. So, TJ, lead on.
I think you could make something pretty interesting. I think it would blow away anything probably anyone else would do.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, and I appreciate it. Is lemon rush? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, something like that.
I actually have, so the new job I just started, my coworker, it's like, oh, you build scale models. So he gave me that kit. So I have it in the stash, kind of at the top of the pile. So maybe I'll break it out and see what I can do.
All right. We look forward to seeing that on Facebook. And, our page is Plastic Posse Podcast. And we'd love it if you'd pop a photo of that on there when you get to the point where it's ready to be shown.
Oh, of course.
I've got a question for you. Actually, I have a couple real quick ones. So I'm not an armor modeler. I'd like to be. I've got a few kits in my stash. I'm working on one of the Tamiya 35th scale Easy 8s right now. But for someone that's not into armor but would like to be, what would you recommend as beginner kind of kits? Something that would be fairly easy to build, but could give you more bang for your buck?
Yeah, Doug, that's a great question, and I always go back to Tamiya. It really is the king of kits, and it's something that a brand new hobbyist can enjoy, and even someone who's an advanced modeler can enjoy. And I would totally recommend not only their 35th scale line, but their 48th scale line. I like to call them slammers. You can sit down and have a very enjoyable evening while binge watching, Stranger Things and complete one, in the span of probably 2 evenings. So for newer modelers, especially, coming over from the gaming world, if they're looking for kits that are accurate and, more importantly, fun to build, I would definitely point them in the direction of Tamiya. And for newer modelers, maybe not having access to a hobby shop or being unable to buy online, Hobby Lobby does carry some of those kits. And when you have a 40% off coupon, it makes it really sweet. And I know the Easy 8 is there, and I know they have the M1 Abrams as well in 48th scale. So
I've got both of those kits from them.
Nice. There you go. Perfect. That's the best place to start, in my humble opinion.
Cool. Thank you. Another quick question. I've been following your Facebook page just as of today, because the guys are like, this is a guy we're getting on the show. And honestly, I'm not an armor guy, so I've never followed you before. And I open up your page, and I have to ask a question about the very first thing I see on your Facebook page. It's
probably a steak, right?
It is. Did you cook that yourself?
Yeah, so I guess one of my other guilty pleasures is, some people eat to live, I live to eat. I just really, I was out at the grocery store, and I've been wanting to buy a tomahawk steak forever, and they had it on sale for $10 a pound, and I was like to my wife, I'm like, we're not having pasta tonight, we're having this steak. So I was just, I was so happy, and I was true to my statement on the there are some fine things in life, Tamiya and a prime cut of beef, and
absolutely.
Needless to say, there was no modeling done on Saturday evening.
No, but that looks absolutely fantastic.
It does.
I just had to give you a thumbs up for that.
John, I like what you do when you take, I guess your current build for that Sherman, where you take a kit that usually gets, to say rudely, crapped on by most modelers on the internet because, don't get this one, it's a piece of junk, don't buy it, it's cheap. Buy this dragon kit with 8 million parts, is way better. So I like when you take a subject like that or a kit like that and turn it into what you turn it into. Do you use a lot of aftermarket parts when you do some of these, or do you like to do just straight out of the box? What do you think is important when it comes to taking a kit that is not really well liked and turning it into a fantastic product?
I appreciate the kind words, and it's a great question, and finding that happy balance, at least for me, is between enjoyment and creating something that's someone spends 5 seconds online looking at. So great example, the old Italieri Sherman. It is to be honest, it's still a very accurate kit. A very accurate kit in terms of its shape, and it does capture the Sherman. There are some little errors on it, but the biggest deficiency in that vehicle that I'm currently building is the tracks. They're stiffer than a 2x4. So fortunately, Ming provides 2 sets in their new jumbo, so I stole them. But going back to your comment, older kits, I really find them enjoyable. Another example, if you go on my page in the album section, there's a step-by-step for a Jagdpanzer L70, and it is the old, ancient, 1970s vehicle. I built it nearly out of the box. I added some aftermarket and tarps on the back of it, but I just really wanted a slammer build. And after I built it up and took it to a show, someone's like, "Oh man, that's awesome! That's the new Tamiya kit, right?" I'm like, "No, man, it's back when we had the bicentennial for independence, for crying out loud." So, I think that's the biggest thing for me is, if you can, it comes down to the finish in a lot of cases. I guess that's the best way to say it. I built, I'm looking at it now, the old KV2 from Tamiya, and I had this good discussion with friends recently concerning, the new KV2 from Tamiya, or KV1 from Tamiya. It's new KV1's awesome, but it's also $65, and some modelers who are on a budget can still take that old kit that you can literally pick up online for anywhere from $15 to $25. So if you're looking to gain experience, try something out of your comfort zone, and not have to worry about messing up a $100 kit, I would definitely point to these older Tamiya kits. They still fit great, with exception to the Panther A. I will caveat, that is the one kit I cannot support. I'm sorry.
Well, that one is from the Stone Age, though.
Yes.
So that's okay.
That one is not great, but they're, I guess, I don't know, the generation of kits that came out in the mid 70s to mid to late 80s. They're still great for beginners or advanced modelers to build and try new techniques.
Yeah, I'd add to that while we're talking about KVs, you can pick up at shows and, at modeling club meetings, the Trumpeter KV series, and you probably pick those up for $15 or $20, and those are really good kits as well.
Yeah, I agree. One thing about those kits, I will say the only downside with older Tamiya kits is the tracks. They use this vinyl that I don't know. Sometimes it's very hard to get paint to adhere to it. But Scott, as you mentioned there, the Trumpeter kits, the KV1s, kind of their first generation, their first foray into 135th scale armor, probably about 20 years ago. They really did a great job in creating an affordable product that's accurate, and the tracks are Lincoln length. So, and I know some of them had vinyl, but I think most of them are Lincoln length, which if you're an out-of-the-box builder, you have everything right there you need.
Yeah, you just don't want to build a tank with rubber band tracks if you can help it. So those Lincoln lengths are definitely a big upgrade. They're not Frial model tracks or something like that, but they're certainly an upgrade over the vinyl rubber band style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know me personally, typically if I build a tank, I'm going to try to get metal tracks for it.
Yeah, I can understand that. So here's my one thing about full model, and maybe this is a conspiracy theory, but full model have been around for a long time. Their tracks, bar none, fantastic. In terms of accuracy, sag, the appearance. The one thing that I've ran into lately, so I have some full model tracks that are probably 25, 30 years old, and they putting the pins in is relatively easy. I have a few sets that I bought recently, and I'm nearly drilling every link. And oh man, when it comes to enjoyment in the hobby, that is something I dread doing. And I've actually sold a couple full tracks just because of that. I've started buying our model. They're a no-name company from eBay, but I have had very big success with King Tiger Panther Mark IV tracks where no drilling required. I can assemble a whole set in about an hour or two. And then if I want to spend about $15 more, they have brass track pins, which are absolutely gorgeous. So I would recommend checking them out. However, I will caution, I know Panzermeister 36, Evan from Canada, just ordered our model tracks from eBay, and they were actually packaged as something else. So
I saw that.
Yeah. So just I'd throw out a recommendation, and they're a little bit more affordable than Frools. I think Frools, depending on when you get them, I've seen them listed as high as $60 to $70 now in the States. But hey, try our model out. You might find it worth your while.
John, have you had any experience with Master Club tracks?
Actually, I do. I have used their King Tiger tracks for my Tamiya Yog Tiger that I just finished, and I have a set for Trumpeter's IS-4. Again, no drilling required, which is nice. The one downside, at least for me, the IS-4 tracks I have, they have the resin pins that come from both sides. Those are tedious, but again, no drilling. So, a pair of tweezers and, concentration and then a hard drink afterwards is probably par for the course. So,
yeah, I think I've built 2 different runs. I've got 4 or 5 more. I did some Panzer III ones. They were perfect. They went together beautifully. And then I did some ones for a Valentine, and they were terrible. Scott probably remembers. I almost gave up twice because those tracks are tiny to begin with, and the pins, you had to put pins on both sides. The pins were too long, so you had to trim one pin down with a knife. Then there was a casting mark where the 2 links met in the middle. You had to file that down, and it sucked. They looked beautiful. They turned out great, but I probably spent a week and a half building them because I would put 8 links together and get pissed and get up and walk away because they were so frustrating. But then I have some Type 66 Sherman tracks from them, and I had bought them to go on the Sherman that I built a couple months ago, but I bought them from Australia right as COVID hit, so it got delayed by months. So I ended up buying a set of Frools and using those instead, but I put a little run together, and they're fantastic. I'm probably going to use them on the Ryefield model Sherman with the interior, even though it comes with a pretty decent set of plastic tracks. but I'll probably model it as one that had T66 tracks.
Nice. TJ, I will say your Sherman is one of the best models I've seen. It was 2019. Did you complete that, or 2020?
No, it was this year.
Okay.
I think March or April, I think, when I finished it.
Pre-COVID.
So
I started
come
it
on,
before.
TJ. Yeah, he didn't think it was very good, and I kept telling him, dude, it's awesome. It's awesome.
It's fantastic.
And,
I appreciate it.
And he just argues with me, but you say it, it's like, oh, okay, well, John likes it, so it must be pretty cool.
As soon as I saw it on the critique group, I was like, man, this is a good looking Sherman. And I think what stuck out to me the most is it just really looked the part. Your overall finish consistency, and I love the OD color. I just thought you friggin' nailed it. And can you talk about the OD color you used?
That is mainly, it is AK Real Color Olive Drab 9 and 22.
Have you used those colors, John? The AK Real Colors?
I actually have 2 boxes sitting here on my desk that I just ordered. I have the German set and then the American set as well, and I need to try them. So I have a few models I need to get to paint so I can try them out.
So it was mainly that color, and then I lightened it up. There's also the faded version of Olive Drab. I use that, and then I also lightened this up with some Tamiya Dark Yellow for some paint distressing. I will say this Real Color Olive Drab is my absolute favorite Olive Drab. I think it's perfect. I use it for literally anything I need painted olive drab. I use this.
I still prefer MRP if I can get it. Excuse me, but the AK Real Colors is really good. I mean, it's right there with Tamiya or Goons. Really, really good quality acrylic lacquer paint, and love the way it goes down. And TJ's Easy 8 looked terrific with it on there. So
what are you guys cutting it with? Real Colors?
I use Mr. Leveling Thinner.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I use as well.
Yeah, me too.
It's like holy water.
Yeah, it
modeling.
is. Unicorn tears.
Unicorn tears, holy water, yeah.
Yep. That's right. So all you modelers out there that hear about unicorn tears on the podcast, that's what they're talking about. Goons Mr. Leveling Thinner. So anyway, it's great stuff. You need 2 bottles. I want to talk about other aftermarket items. Like, I am a big fan of aluminum barrels, and it really kind of comes down to a couple of things. First of all, if you have a tank like a Firefly where you've got a huge long tube, sometimes it's not easy to see it, but they're almost always warped. The other thing is you've got to eliminate 2 seams on a round tube for the entire length of that tube, and it's really hard to do without flat spotting it anywhere. And so I really like the aluminum barrels. How often do you use those, and do you like the barrels?
So I do love aluminum barrels, and I'm gonna go back and I'll say I remember. Sound like an old person now, but I remember when the aluminum barrels, Jordi Rubio was like the quintessential name in aluminum barrels back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's kind of when I got more serious about the hobby because of Band of Brothers. That was the time it came out. One of the first vehicles I built with an aluminum barrel was the Sherman Firefly, and the Jordi Rubio barrel had that machine muzzle brake because it was circular. At the time, you couldn't find German muzzle brakes as a single piece because of the square brake holes. And I remember when Edward came out with their first one-piece aluminum barrel with the muzzle brake milled on the gun barrel, and I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I think I bought, my dad, I think we bought like a dozen of them, and I still have them. And every time I build a King Tiger or a Tiger One, I slap it on there. So I agree with you. How can I say this? My time is worth a lot. I try to cut every corner I can when it comes to modeling because I do like to build as much as I can because there's so many good kits out there. And if I can pay, $12-15 for a barrel that's perfect, good to go, I will definitely do that. So I'll echo your support in turn barrels, and I think I just actually got a stack from Def Models sitting here on the desk. Those are very affordable, and I would highly recommend them.
Well, John, I promised you that I wouldn't take your entire evening, but man, this is fun. What's your favorite armor kit that you've ever built? Just flat out had the most fun. Love the way it turned out.
Oh man, that is a tough question to answer. I'm looking at my display case now, and if I had to pick one, I would go with a model that I recently built, probably within the last 2 years, Tamiya's Brumbar. I did the disc camouflage scheme on it.
Nice.
Had an absolute blast with the kit. It being on the cover of Tamiya Model Magazine, humble brag moment there. That was, that only sweetened the deal. And
yeah, that never hurts. Never hurts.
I do love the publishing aspect of scale modeling because it's incredibly motivating, and that's one of the reasons I love posting on Facebook to get the feedback from everyone. But going back to your question, it is the Brumbar. It's not only the scheme, but also first time I really used Abe's epoxy putty to kind of semi-sculpt a mantlet cover and tarps on it. It just overall a really fun build that I've seen some people copy it, and I am happy. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and I absolutely love seeing that type of stuff go on in the hobby. So yeah, long story short, Tamiya Brumbar disc camouflage scheme.
That's a great choice. I bought the the PDF version of that magazine just for that article. So there's my fanboy moment.
Oh, now if you could just get them to pay me, that'd be great. Oh, sorry. It's the Posse. We gotta have a little spice.
That's right. We sure do. Well, TJ, what other questions do you have for John?
Oh, I think that pretty much just covers it, really.
Doug, anything else you want to ask John?
Other than grilling tips, I don't have anything.
We'll take it offline. We'll have a video session at the grill.
Alrighty.
Man, I got to go to Facebook and take a look at this steak. It's sounding better and better by the minute.
It looks pretty good.
Well, John, thank you so much for being our official first guest host on the Plastic Posse podcast. You've been a gentleman. It's been so much fun to talk to you. We'll continue to follow you on Facebook and banter back and forth with you on the Scale Modeler Critique group. And just wish you nothing but the best. Thanks so much, and hopefully you'll come back for another visit.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invite, and I'd love to come back. So great success. Onward and upward for the podcast.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, John.
Yep. Cheers, gents.
Well, thanks for sticking with us. This is our first podcast, and we're all a little nervous, and we're all new at this, but we really appreciate you giving us your time. We look forward to talking to you again in 2 weeks when we do our second episode. We'll be talking about painting, real basic stuff, the reason we paint and how it works so well and what it does to improve our kits. We'll also be continuing to have interviews, and we'll talk about whatever we think is cool. If there's anything you want to hear about, give us a shout, and maybe we'll talk about it too.
Be a part of the Posse. We'd love you to share feedback on every episode with us on our Facebook page, which can be found on the Plastic Posse podcast on Facebook, or you can email us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. Stop in, drop a line, let us know what you think. If you have an idea, feel free to share it. We'd love to hear it. And if you think you have something interesting you'd like to add, let us know. Maybe we can get you on here and you can have a chance to tell the world.
One last reminder before we wrap it up, we want to remind you guys, go visit our sister podcasts on scale modeling. You probably have already been there, but just in case you haven't, make sure you give Dave, Ian, and Julian a listen over at On the Bench. They're on episode 91 as of the time we're recording this, pretty soon to hit 100 episodes. So, congratulations on that, you guys. That's amazing. Also, Plastic Model Mojo, Dave and Mike from Kentucky, they're on episode 19, and they're a lot of fun to listen to. And Stuart up in Canada is on with Scale Model Podcast. He's on episode 54. As I've said at the start of the show, these guys and these podcasts have been very helpful to us, and we're excited to help support them. They've been very supportive of us. Well, if you made it this far, thanks a lot for coming along on our inaugural episode. We really appreciate it. If you could take the time to go to Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts and give us a 5-star rating, we'd really appreciate it. It'll help more listeners find us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Thanks again.